If you love Push Black's Black History Year podcast, then you'll also love 2-Minute Black History. In only 2 minutes, you'll hear little-known stories about our people and reclaim the knowledge we need to take action and advance our community. To move towards the future, you've got to look to the past. Learn the history you didn't get in school. Tune in to 2-Minute Black History, right here on the Black History Year feed or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode of Black History Year was recorded before the passing of Nikki Giovanni. The acclaimed poet, writer, commentator, educator, and activist passed away on December 9th of 2024 at the age of 81. She is referenced quite often throughout this episode with admiration, affection, and sincere love by both the guest and the host. And Push Black extends their heartfelt condolences to her friends and family at this time.
Coming up next, we're discussing Black women, art, and the price of speaking truth to power on this episode of Black History Year.
When you feel a cold coming, shorten it with Zicam, the #1 cold shortening brand.
Oh no.
Your cold is coming! Your cold is coming!
Thanks, Revere. I really should keep Zicam in the house.
Only if you want to shorten your cold. Ha!
Take it from America's most revered messenger. Shorten your cold at the first sign with cold shortening products from Zicam, the #1 cold shortening brand. Available in stores or see where to buy at Zicam.com.
What scares society about outspoken Black women? For instance, at the height of her popularity, Nina Simone faced so much hatred for her civil rights anthem, Mississippi Goddamn, that she fled the U.S. Or how about the Queen of Soul demanding RESPECT, only for the FBI to open a 200-page file on her contributions to the movement? Artist and activist Toni K. Bambara once said, "The role of artists is to make the revolution irresistible." But what does that mean to use your platform that amplifies your voice, but also exposes you to scrutiny, violence, and sabotage? I'm Darren from Push Black, and you're tuned into Black History Year. On this episode, we'll revisit and reframe moments from Black pop cultural history in which Black women artists used their platforms, mediums, and lives to advocate for justice. From Carrie Mae Weems' Kitchen Table series to Ntozake Shange for Colored Girls, we're shedding light on Black women's artists' ability to amplify the voice of the unheard and give visibility to realities the white world would rather unsee. Now, guiding us on this tour is our special guest, audio architect, radio personality, and cultural journalist Bobbi Booker. She's the managing editor of Planned Philly at WHYY News, developing news coverage of urban design, development, policy, and city planning in Philadelphia. Now, Bobbi can also be heard on Spirit Soul Music every Sunday from 6 to 9 a.m. and Jazz Through the Night, weeknights from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. But first, we got some history with Len.
Monique is a comedy legend and a Black woman who refuses to conform to the Hollywood system. Whether it's harassment, mistreatment, or pay disputes, Monique reveals it all. But she is far from the first Black woman to reveal her truth. The legendary 1940s jazz piano star Hazel Scott was blacklisted shortly after getting her own TV show, The Hazel Scott Show. Scott was named on the Red Channels, a publication that identified suspected communists in entertainment. Scott wanted to defend herself, volunteering to speak before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Despite her innocence, she lost her livelihood and moved to Paris for a quieter life. On January 18, 1968, famed singer and actress Eartha Kitt publicly denounced the Vietnam War at a White House luncheon hosted by the First Lady. Her bravery swiftly resulted in a CIA investigation, and her career in the United States was derailed. Fannie Lou Hamer's August 22, 1964 speech to the Democratic National Convention put her on the political map. There, she told her story of trying to register to vote in Mississippi. President Lyndon B. Johnson held a press conference hoping to overshadow Hamer, but her testimony powerfully amplified Black voter struggles. These Black women stood on business, regardless of the consequences, because they knew standing up for Black women was crucial for our liberation. They remind us that our stories and our experiences are powerful tools for truth.
Hey, how's it going today, Bobby?
It is going wonderful, great, and grand. Thank you for asking. And yourself?
Oh, just lovely. Happy to be in conversation with you today. Such wonderful energy. Really appreciate you taking time to meet with us today, Bobby.
Oh, my goodness, of course.
Yes. With that said, we got a bit of a game we want to open up our conversation with today. Yeah. So this is a true or false game. I'm going to read off 10 statements related to today's episode. Some are going to be true. Some are going to be subtly false. Some are just going to be opinionated. And you just let us know how they land with you with true or false. How does that sound?
I can't even. What about opinion? That may sound wrong, but it feels right. You know how it is.
Yes, indeed. All right.
I'm with it. Let's go.
True or false, Bobby? Aretha Franklin was monitored by the FBI for her contributions to the civil rights and Black Power movements.
It sounds true to me.
Absolutely is true. True or false, Bobby? Mahalia Jackson was the first gospel artist to win a Grammy.
I'll say yes, because if she didn't, she should have.
Yes. Oh, true. Absolutely. All right, 2 for 2. Okay. True or false, Bobby? Mahalia Jackson often carried tens of thousands of dollars in cash from show to show due to segregated banks refusing to cash checks made out to Black women.
Most entertainers did. Most Black entertainers did, yes.
Yes.
Which is why they didn't put that purse down.
Yeah.
That purse was not out of sight because of that.
Ooh. True or false, Bobby? Jill Scott is the queen of neo soul.
Oh, I think there's a few people would argue about that, but I'll give her a title. I'll give her a crown.
All right. True or false, Bobby? HBO was dead wrong for canceling Jill Scott's The #1 Ladies Detective Agency show.
Now, I know that's an opinion, and I agree wholeheartedly with it. They were dead wrong. Thank you.
Yes. The first words Nina Simone said to Martin Luther King Jr. upon their first meeting was, "I am not nonviolent."
Now, this is a first for me. And I'll say she said that.
That is
Why not?
absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah, that was Nina.
So let me get this straight. She said, "I am not nonviolent."
Yep, that was the first.
Okay.
When they
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Relatedly, true or false, Bobby? Nina Simone once claimed in a BBC interview that she brandished a switchblade at a record executive who stole her work and refused to compensate her.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I support the motion. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yes, indeed. So that's a bit of a sneaky one. So it's certainly false. She actually fired a gun at this record executive. It wasn't a switchblade. It was actually a gun. Nina Simone, standing on business. True or false, Bobby? Sonia Sanchez is the reason we have Black studies on college campuses.
That is very true. She's one of the big reasons, no question.
Absolutely. True or false, Bobbi? Black women's rage can be a source of creative and political power.
Amen to that, yes.
Last one. Black feminism or womanism is essential to Black liberation.
Always has and always will be.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for your rich and sincere responses, Bobbi. We appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we dive deep into today's conversation, where we're going to be revisiting and reframing certain moments from Black pop cultural history, specifically centering Black women artists and how they use their platform to advocate for social justice, we like to open up all our conversations with the same question to each guest. It's going to be a bit of a big one, but I'm curious, Bobbi, what does Black liberation mean to you?
Black liberation means, you know, it's interesting. You always say that. I've heard you say the phrase standing on business, and it really is about reclaiming and celebrating Black identity, challenging white supremacy in all of its forms, but never losing sight of the value and power in your worth. So that's what it means to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love this last bit that you lifted up, never losing sight of the power, of our power and our worth. With that said, just to open up today's conversation, I'm really thinking about how art has often allowed Black folks to be reminded of our power, of our voice, of our pride. Bobbi, what do you think it is about art just generally? Like, what does art do for us politically that more like explicit political activities or objects like manifestos or marches? What is it that art can do for us that maybe some of these other modes of politics can't?
And first of all, we can't. When we talk, we're gonna. This is all about Black folk, so we're gonna keep it right there. And when it comes to creativity, when it comes to arts, when it comes to arts and culture, all roads lead to Black folk. And Black folk are the foundation of all roads globally. So, in other words, we can't help ourselves. When it comes to arts, it is our expressive form in how we speak, in how we relate, and how we love, and how we comprehend the world. It's through that prism of arts and creativity. Now, whether or not it's defined and given a title like that, that can sometimes be sketchy, because what some people call art is what other people call trash. And in a contemporary sense, if we look at, going back 5 decades or so to the official birth of hip hop, I was around, during those early birthdays, and I heard all kinds of disparaging words about the music that I was embracing and loving. And I was very challenged by people calling it trash, garbage. It was, they just stealing sounds. They're not seeing, hearing, and identifying with the creative essence that was blossoming from a lack of formal arts and culture, as those things were being taken out of, especially taken out of public schools. Instead of giving children an instrument to take home and kind of figure out and learn, those things were taken away. But people still, and our people, Black folks still, we need to engage with these sounds, with this music, with these movements. This is a part of us. So you take away the instruments, you take away the formality. Well then, I got a record player, you got a record player. We got Mama and them's records. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. So, that's, and to me, that's just what we do. We make a way out of no way. but we always do it not just with love and grace, but also with this creative third eye that we seem to have and utilize. Again, whether we know it or not, it's still there, and it's still being used to help us get over.
Absolutely. How much time you got, Bobbi? I may have to go off script a little bit. Now I'm thinking about this wonderful historical moment that you painted around the birth of hip hop, where musical education, arts education is being taken out of like inner city and urban school areas, and we had to adapt. We had to turn the vinyl record player, this instrument mean for consuming music, and we transformed it into like an instrument to create music. I'm also thinking about just the power of the voice as well. Specifically, when I think about a starting point where we might begin when we think about Black women's artists' contributions to political movements, specifically in this country, it's hard to get away from the power of the voice. With that said, I'm very curious, how does Mahalia Jackson's legacy resonate with you? Before we kind of dive deeper into her specific contributions, what do you have to share with us about Mahalia and her impact on your life?
Mahalia is the bridge of for as in the 20th century. She literally and figuratively served as a bridge from our ancient music art form of gospel, which has always been passed down. There are people that are still worshiping in a way that if someone were to land here from 150 years ago, they could easily identify with. They'd be like, I know that. I know that. And I just witnessed basically a testimony dance. It was a worship, but it wasn't a worship, of some young South Africans celebrating being in college. And they were amongst the first of their families and their communities. And they were doing this leg motion that Chris Brown has now made so popular, that high leg stepping. And every time they did it, there was a clap. And the clap was in rhythm, and nobody knew when the leg would go up, but everybody knew when to clap. And the moment I heard that and watched that session, I said, well, shucks, that ain't nothing but a worship session here. That's exactly, it's only, and we ain't throwing our leg up high like that, but there are elements that are the same. And Mahalia was so fortunate to exist at a time of mid-century, 20th century, of the last century, to take the music of our ancestors that she had been so seeped in, like everyone else in her community, and then be able to deliver it to folk far beyond her community. Now, mind you, she was always uplifted by her community. And then she served as a mentor for so many other gospel greats, most notably Aretha Franklin. And then you look at the role that she played during the civil rights movement and how she was embraced by Martin Luther King. And how it was Mahalia who sang, not only at the a March on Washington, but at his homegoing after he was senselessly murdered. Mahalia, in any other term, she would be considered operatic. And in its own way, she is. It's just that she's doing it in service to the spiritual word. And that is so mighty. And I mean, let's go back to one thing about Black folk is, we're real good with that one name. And Mahalia was, you could almost say she was the original Jackson, the original Miss Jackson. But you say Mahalia even now, You ain't gotta say a last name. You know, you bow your head and pray. You know who it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, indeed. Titan. Oh my gosh. One thing that comes up for me right now, and thank you so much for lifting up her mentorship of soul
Hmm.
artists. Specifically, you lifted up Aretha Franklin. One thing that comes up for me, I'm curious if you're able to kind of clarify this for me and our listeners, Bobbi, the distinction between gospel and soul. Trying to understand this bridge between Mahalia and Aretha Franklin, but specifically through the lens of these genres. What can you tell us about the distinction between gospel and soul? What makes them similar? What makes them different?
Well, you know, one of the great songwriters of the latter part of the last century is Leon Ware. And if you go dig into those liner notes, you'll see him on everything, every artist, all the way through and beyond Maxwell. You know, from Marvin Gaye to Quincy Jones to Minnie Riperton, every soul artist, R&B artist, um, landed on his doorstep, and he's an unheralded name. I'm quite sure there are a lot of people that have never heard his name before, and he and I would speak pretty often. And one of the things he pointed out to me that the difference between a soul song and a gospel song is its intention.
Oh, that's so spiritual. It's like, oh, ooh, we. It's
And
intense.
and when you break it down, and mind you, I play a lot of I'm involved in I listen to a lot of spiritually centric music. I don't necessarily call it gospel because I think that can be limiting.
Mm,
And I also believe that we have to be open to how spirit flows because there are no limitations to how spirit truly flows.
absolutely.
So, but I have to sometimes pause myself when I'm listening and auditioning some of this music before I play it in my forums, and you have to pause, like, wait a minute, what is the intention of this song? Because they're, you know, um, because you can scream out the Lord's name for a few reasons beyond being in church.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, um, but I think that's kind of been my litmus test. Has been, what is the intention?
Mm,
Are you praising and acknowledging a higher spirit, or are you embracing a human being? And not that those can't coincide with each other, but usually there is some demarcation in
yeah.
the course of a song, or whatever the performance type is.
Whatever the adventure, there's a BMW engineered to take it on. The X3 delivers a striking design with agile performance. The 100% electric i4 packed with pure electric energy. Or the plug-in hybrid X5, an impressive, versatile SUV granting full control on every journey. Choose what powers your next adventure during the BMW Road Home Sales Event. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Hurry in for exceptional offers through January 2nd. Visit bmwusa.com for details.
Why get all your holiday decorations delivered through Instacart? Because maybe you only bought 2 wreaths, but you have 12 windows. Or maybe your toddler got very eager with the advent calendar. Or maybe the inflatable snowman didn't make it through the snowstorm. Or maybe the twinkle lights aren't twinkling. Whatever the reason, this season, Instacart's here for hosts and their whole holiday haul. Get decorations from the Home Depot, CVS, and more through Instacart and enjoy free delivery on your first 3 orders. Service fees and terms apply.
What's up, fam? Y'all feeling the episode so far? Look, at Push Black, we agree with Marcus Garvey when he said, a people without knowledge, their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. I'm guessing you probably feel like that's important too. I mean, you're listening to a podcast on Black history. So, if you're finding value in our episodes and are able to chip in, please consider donating at blackhistoryyear.com. Most people do $5 or $10 a month, but every contribution helps. Thanks for your support. All right, y'all. Let's get back to the episode. You know, Bobby, during our check-in, you mentioned something that was really fascinating. Really had us sitting and reflecting on it. Specifically, it was about Aretha Franklin. You told us that Aretha Franklin really arrived, or specifically Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace really arrived like a crossroads within our society, or you described it as a crossroads in our society.
Well, you know, Aretha Franklin is just endlessly fascinating to me, and I'm quite sure to a lot of other people. She was as close to being a child prodigy as one could be, although I don't think that term was used to describe her. And the reason why that term wasn't used to describe her is because everybody in her family was talented.
Yes.
Her mother was a great singer. Her father, C.L. Franklin, was a prominent minister and activist and went all over the country. And there were, I mean, just especially in AM radio of old, you would hear Reverend C.L. Franklin's sermons on the radio, and you would hear them in people's homes because people bought his albums. So before Aretha, you know, Aretha was born into it, literally born into it. And then Aretha's sisters were all great voices. So that's why, yeah, you can say, well, she's a child prodigy, but not really. She started young, right? She was that. She was great in terms of all the folk in her family, and I would honestly say she went toe to toe with her father, because her father was a dynamic singer and preacher. So based on her father's activism and as well as hers, because they went around the country, they saw how people lived, and they were from Detroit. So they intimately, deeply understood the conditions under which Black folk were dealing with things. So Aretha's first hit, because she kind of was lingering around for a few years. She was a jazz artist and kind of a smoky R&B singer. I mean, her voice is great. You know Aretha no matter what. It's very distinguished. But in 1967, that's when Respect was released. And that catapulted her into the next wave of fame. You know, because that song became an anthem for civil rights, for women's empowerment. I mean, it was embraced for a few things, even though, you know, on its surface, it was a woman telling a man, "Look, now you need to respect men.
Yeah.
You need to act like you know.
Yeah.
And let me help you understand it. RESPECT.
Yes.
Which again is more Black, because that's how we talk. We spell things out. What time is it? TIME. Oh, I said what? I mean, you know, it's a part of our thing. But what really took Aretha to the next level was when she did her gospel album, Amazing Grace.
Okay.
In 1970, 71. Yeah, 1970. It was recorded in 1970. And it still stands as the biggest selling gospel album of all time. And one of the biggest selling live albums. No one does live albums. Live albums are a problem. And this was a problem too, because they tried to do a film documentary Sidney Lumet. He was the director of it, and he didn't use a clapboard and sync up the music with the film, and so the film wasn't released for over 40 years.
Wow.
But the album was released, and it was a stone hit. And that's not because black folk were buying it, because when you look at the documentary, you see Mick Jagger in the audience. You see white folk clapping and losing their minds over what they're witnessing, because it is a pure black church experience.
Wow.
I mean, the only thing missing from that concert are the ushers going by with the plates. The only thing missing. And I'm quite sure if somebody had walked down even with a cup, it would have been stuffed with bills, because it was that. It was definitely that.
Yeah.
But Aretha, it's so interesting to go from, again, we talk about, intention, right? She went from a love song, not love song, but a demanding song. And she did sing some great love songs. I mean, Angel is like, is my heart. But boy, her gospel, which are her roots, and so connects her to the foundation of what kept black folk sane and stable throughout all the madness that existed during their experience in this country through now.
Ooh. Okay, quick follow-up question, Bobbi.
Go for it.
Pardon my youth. I did not know this in research and in preparation for today's conversation. I had no idea that Aretha's rendition of Respect was a remake of Otis Redding. Yeah. With that said, just to pontificate a little bit, I'm curious, Bobbi, from your perspective, why do you think Aretha's hit landed the way that it did, or landed the way that it did differently from Otis Redding's kind of rendition of Respect? What did Aretha add to that?
I mean, Aretha really knows how to own a song. She just, I mean, I don't, much respect to Otis. Even Otis had to say, it's not my song anymore. He had to say that. He's just like, no, it's not mine. I mean, he knew it. He knew it. You could, And she also did the same thing with Until You Come Back to Me, which was a Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder penned that song initially. And, I'm going to knock on your door, wait by your, I call it the stalking song, because that really is what it is. Lyrically, you're like, wait a minute. I know you ain't just standing out there in the cold waiting for me to open the door. What's wrong? You better go somewhere. But Aretha took, Stevie did it, and it almost sounds like bubblegum pop. Stevie's like, I'm gonna walk by your door, and it sounds. Aretha's like, I know what I'm gonna do. You're like, ooh, I'm not gonna make her mad. Aretha just has that phrasing, which is something that she perfected as a young gospel singer. You can hear it. Aretha's also one of those people that you never even have to say her name. Like, you don't even have to say her full name. Because what do you say? You go ahead, Riri. Retha. It's so, and that right there shows the intimacy that our culture in particular have about Aretha. She's our big cousin, our big sister, our auntie. She's somebody's daughter. And so, anytime we apply those names like that, that's affection speaking. That's the heart speaking. And as much as Aretha will be known for her creative contributions, she really was a warrior woman for her activism during the civil rights movement. And she used her creative talents to help finance, help to free people who had been unjustly jailed or were being challenged legally. She was amongst that squad of notable Black creatives that literally put their money where their mouths were.
Ooh.
And, that right there, to me, again, not just defines her as a warrior woman, but, what has been a very consistent line amongst creatives throughout our timeline here in the US of A. And a lot of times those contributions, those actions, and those efforts go without acknowledgement. But there's no need for acknowledgement because doing the job is doing the job. So that's my final comment about Aretha is the impact that she had far beyond the hits that she was making.
Oh, yes, indeed. Okay, I want to segue into another warrior woman. And I'm thinking about, not to kind of compare and contrast these folks, but I'm thinking about how much of her legacy kind of doesn't seem, at least from my perspective, it's not as appreciated as much as Aretha's, even outside of the artistry. Right now, I'm thinking about Nina Simone, how outspoken she was, even beyond some of the folks that we've already discussed. But before we kind of dig into Nina Simone's legacy, just at a very general level, Bobbi, I'm very curious in your experience, what does it mean to be an outspoken Black woman in America? And how do you think Nina kind of embodied that?
I mean, Nina was outspoken for a number of reasons. One, she had crazy, mad talent on a very different level than the aforementioned Riri, but it still packed a punch. You look at the tune she released in 1964, which is Mississippi Goddamn. Just a solid punch in the face response to systematic racism, and a real using music to help deal with the pain of the murder of Medgar Evers. If we bring that to now, if we bring that to a contemporary stance, look at all of the creative endeavors that that came out, and I mean literature, music, spoken word, actions, art, all kinds of art that came out as a result of Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, the subsequent Black Lives Matter movement, and there are some things that obviously will never be replicated because they are a response to this time and space. But that's what Nina did. She responded to what was happening in her time and space, and she used her tools, which could be considered a protest. I just never really saw it that way. I just saw it as a statement.
It's hard to think about Nina without reflecting on the backlash that she received and just being just politically outspoken in general. Yeah, any thoughts on how might we better protect some of our artists who are outspoken?
Well, then as now, protect them by also supporting them. Go go to their shows. If they're performing live, be there. use put put your money where your mouth is and buy the real thing. I'll never forget in the era of CDs and cassettes when they still kind of coexisted on a marketing plane. And this was a young hip hop group at the time, and they were just like, all but pleading with black folk to do like other cultures were doing. They were like, yo, you buy a CD and then you copy that, like for 20 of your friends. And these other guys are going into what was that spot? The record store, Sam's whatever, and the other, he's like, 10 of them go in and they each individually buy, even if they're buying the same thing, they buy it. And that's what we have to do. We have to be more demonstrative in how we support our people with the physical products and, merch, whatever things, and make sure that we're putting that money directly to that artist. So, it's a lot of fan things and other things going on. You may not be supporting the actual estate of that artist. You may just be supporting a fan, and there's nothing wrong with that. And share. When you know something, share something. It's real easy to get into the booty shake, but how do where do you share that message in the music? And feel free to go deep. I'm not opposed to, seeing salons come back where we just kind of sit around and just dissect, some good music together, with some wine and people, just enjoying those sounds. So we can find creative ways as well to continue to share that message. But the biggest thing is just support. Someone has a book, buy it. If someone has information, share it, but make sure you link to the genuine artist.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet, and the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned, and way more sales going. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whenever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout experience as business powerhouses like Aloe, Allbirds, and Skims. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
Premium luggage that's not just an accessory, but a companion on your journey. Briggs & Riley believes in luggage so deeply, they've crafted it to last for life. Guaranteed. At Briggs & Riley, any broken part will be repaired. Every stitch, every wheel, even every zipper. With our new line of simpatico luggage, you can pack 34% more. Then compress your luggage so it fits perfectly into your overhead bin. Briggs & Riley. Travel uninterrupted. Learn more and choose your color at briggs-riley.com.
I want to share two quotes.
Sure.
Before we think about our next figure here. So Nina Simone once declared that it was an artist's duty to reflect the sign of the times. And relatedly, Tony K. Bambara, wonderful writer, once said that the role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. Now, thinking about those two quotes, Bobby, I'm wondering, just curious, why is it that celebrities, specifically thinking about artists, like our famous Black artists, why is it that celebrity and the platform that Black artists have often serves as an avenue for seeking change for Black folks? Do you feel like that's somehow unfair to place that kind of demand on our artists?
Well, that's a very interesting combination of situations because um, celebrity may serve as an avenue of acknowledgement of the existence of this talent. Um, and 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 we're all now at a point that we really do understand, maybe not truly understand, but can see and comprehend the the problems that extend from contemporary celebrity, which is also fame, and that becomes a very prickly thing. And what was what was celebrity even 5 years ago, let alone 50, you know, are some very, very different things. But that said, how's the saying go? Cream always rises to the top. So if you're good, for the most part, you're going to hopefully have it, a sincere mm, platform of celebrity. And I say that, so like an artist like Michelle Ndegeocello, you know that's like solid. Even if you can barely remember a hit from her, and she's actually in America. When you go back and look at everything, she is ground zero for the neo soul movement in America. You know,
Ooh,
but
ooh.
but where's the celebrity? And then she's almost like a musician's musician. She's also just a dynamo. So I almost consider her like a contemporary Nina Simone in its own crazy way. I see some parallels there that you know that just don't cease. But
Mm-hmm.
there's always parallels because it's kind of very interesting. We're only talking about artists that uh, have been of import to our culture and American culture, and some beyond, for the in the last 75 years. But you know, there's the 75 years that preceded that influenced them, and then the 75 years that preceded that influenced the people that influenced them. So, there's always this interesting kind of Hail Mary into the future from the past.
I love that phrase.
That's kind of what we're doing. We're always, we're paying it forward in ways that we sometimes know about and oftentimes can only dream about and can't even dream. We can't even comprehend because
Mm.
it's beyond the recognition or realization of what it is that we are. So
Yes, indeed.
so I always, that's kind of how I think about it. That's why even if I think about hip hop, I'm like, yeah, that's cute. I mean, what we know as hip hop now, if we go back to the birthplace, the timeline, the official timeline, because it
Mhm.
had a 50th anniversary celebration on the Grammys and birthday cards and all that good stuff. It was official. But, you know, cats didn't start rapping in 1974. You know,
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
they didn't start, that didn't begin there. That's that's a performance speaking and type of iteration that has been a part of our culture for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And even our contemporary hip hop, if you go back and listen to some tunes coming out of prior generations, you'll hear it. You'll hear it. It coming from men and women both. You go,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. This is a perfect segue into two rich figures that you lifted up. I'm thinking about, the years before the official birth of hip hop and some of the influences that may have led to its official birth. Right now, I'm thinking about Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni. Um,
Ooh.
yes, yes. Just starting with Sonia, and also thinking about these parallel Hail Marys to the future. You mentioned that you see a bit of a through line, a connection between Sonia Sanchez to like Jill Scott. What is it that you see there?
The big thing is proximity.
Okay.
They lived and learned and, dare I say, loved in Philadelphia. I mean, I'm saying in their own timelines in life. This was for one person, but is for another person right now. But at that time that they connected, they lived here. And as Jill Scott was finding her voice in every sense of the word, finding her voice, because Jill Scott started out as a spoken word artist and was and I mean, the first times I saw Jill Scott was, right here in Philly. I was surprised she could sing. I was blown away because that came way after seeing her, spit at the poetry slams that used to be held in Old City here in Philly. Well, as she was a part of that, because there's a lot of Pan Africanists, Afrocentric individuals that are or were a part of that scene, that naturally opened itself up to the attention of Sonia, who was like a grand dame in that whole thing, because it was never unusual here in Philly to be somewhere and Sonia, would bless the mic, you
Yes.
know. Hello, good sister. Let me talk to you about. I mean, it's always beautiful to hear Sonia because she takes you back in
Mm,
time, but do know that she's radical and
yeah.
in the best, and I say that in the best sense because she was, Sonia Sanchez was not afraid of being arrested, standing up against war as a whole squad of grandmothers did right here in Philly, and they threw handcuffs on her and took her away, and she was in grandmother status. So if we go back to some of those earlier years when she was teaching Black history in universities, as she was opening the doors to Pan African studies, as she was a part of that knowledge base, you know, Jill encountered her and was definitely deeply influenced by Sonia. And the evidence of that influence was seen, sometimes weekly at these poetry slams. And that never left her because Jill Scott, while she is lauded as an R&B and soul singer, she wears a number of hats.
Mm,
She's an actress, she's a poet, she's an author. She is a writer, and she still publishes. I'm saying she's an author, but when I say she's a writer, she publishes in different magazines on a regular basis. Um, Her creativity is not limited to one lane, and nor is Sonia Sanchez. When you look at the body of work that she's been involved in, and still dropping science
Mm-hmm.
on very, because she's been guesting on countless albums over the course of, I mean, decades at this point, including her own albums. And this is Sonia Sanchez, her own albums that she has released in tandem with her dynamic work as a poet. And you want to talk about a near extinct species, is the official black poet. I mean, we're there, they're there, they're holding on always, but again, they don't get the acknowledgement they deserve.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of that, for folks who may be somehow, living under a rock, for folks who may be under or unaware of Nikki Giovanni and her rich legacy,
Yes.
what do you have to share with us about Nikki G?
Nikki Giovanni is is one of those talents that that came out of the Black Arts movement, while Sonia Sanchez was firmly entrenched in the Black Arts movement
Mm.
with so many laudables. Nikki was like just coming along as that existed. She would be under the umbrella of that, but she wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily be a founding member. She would be, the adjunct coming
Mhm.
along. But look, she took her role seriously and understood the power of her voice. Like Sonia, she dropped a number of pivotal albums that not just showcased um, her talent as a poet and observer of unjust dynamics for women and for black folk in America. She used her power at that time as a voice that was listened to incorporate the black gospel sound in
Ah.
her music. So her music had an underbed of the church. And
Huh.
again, there are things that are very challenging in that, because you'll hear a traditional gospel choir there and they are wailing. And then Nikki comes along and her prose is something that, let's just say, it would be like saying the quiet parts out loud. And she's doing this in conjunction with a gospel choir, which is, it's challenging, but it makes you think. And Nikki also, just like Sonia, continued in education, becoming a vibrant professor, and she still travels, and also she's also kind of challenging people's perspective about how black folk engage with space. So for
Huh.
years, she has been an advocate of black folk using space truly as the final frontier.
Oh, wow.
And knowing it, because when you think about space exploration, you ain't necessarily thinking of a brown face. And when you hear the proponents of that right now in our
Yeah.
contemporary space, you know, you get a very sneaky suspicion that somehow or another it's just not, they're not being ubiquitous in the consideration of who's going to be on the ship.
Hmm.
So, you know, um, and Nikki has really turned that upside down, because her whole thing is that humanity's capacity for greatness and discovery may come from beyond this place called Earth.
Ooh.
And mind you, she's also done so much to highlight the Black pioneers. Like I think it's Mae Jemison.
Oh yeah, Mae Jemison.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
She is the first Black woman to
Mm-hmm.
go to space.
Yeah.
I mean, she's also again made it the subject of a book and a subsequent album. I know this came out, I'd say several years ago because I had both.
Yeah.
And I don't know, someone got them now except for me. But I believe it was called Quilting the Black-Eyed Pea,
Okay.
something like that. We can look it up and find it. Just putting that little tidbit there.
Hey, this is Len, the producer. The book that Bobbi is referencing is Quilting the Black-Eyed Pea, Poems and Not Quite Poems by Nikki Giovanni, which features the title poem, Quilting the Black-Eyed Peas, We're Going to Mars.
But I just love the avenue that she took in that. Like, yeah, say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud, but it space is a consideration. This isn't a one-sided thing. Like we should all think about the possibilities of what exists for us in the universe.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's such a capacious reframing of our relationship to space. Because often when I think about Black people in space, think about another, early hip hop pioneer, another poem. I think about Gil Scott and
Oh,
Whitey,
yes.
right? That's
Exactly.
how I've always felt about space exploration. Like, okay, yeah, Whitey on the moon, right? We got all these problems down here we need to fix. But what you just offered through the lens of Nikki Giovanni is so gifting for thinking about just the expansiveness of what humanity could be, if we were able to encounter another entity to kind of, I don't know, make things more progressive for us. So thank you so much for lifting that up. I just got one last question on Nikki Giovanni.
Sure.
Thinking about her relationship to hip hop specifically,
Uh,
um, I've been told that, her use of like vernacular, everyday Black language in her poetry absolutely influenced a lot of hip hop pioneers. And, a personal moment I've always kind of really revered Nikki for is her thug life tattoo she got on her forearm.
yes.
Yes, indeed. What do you have to share with us about Nikki Giovanni and her relationship, her influence and impact on hip hop?
You know, Nikki inspired countless artists, activists, educators, and she too was inspired. A big part of that thug life tattoo is also an acknowledgement of the impact of the Black Panther movement and these revolutionary folk who dared to challenge authority by arming themselves and ensuring that their community was well fed. And the actions that the Black Panthers took that encouraged and inspired so many Black communities around the country, including Tupac's mother.
Mm.
And those lyrics that, Tupac offered us oftentimes, went back to those foundational seeds that were planted
Yes.
from, those relationships with the Black Panthers.
Mhm.
And Nikki got that. And she also understood the power of, again, that passing a baton.
Mhm.
He was practically he is a child of the Black Panther movement. but he's also somewhat of a grandchild of sorts of
Yeah.
the civil rights movement. But, you know, it literally same shit, different day, because he had his battles and his fights. And I always respected Nikki taking a stance and doing that tattoo because she also did it at a time. Not everybody was getting tatted. And she made it very clear that this was her first and only tattoo. This was her
Yeah.
first and only tattoo, but it was there for a reason. And honestly, you're not going to be in that position of pointing out what is wrong with this country, with offering constructive criticism while uplifting a community. You can't do that without having some element of thug in you. You have to be, to be a revolutionary, you can't necessarily be a punk.
Ooh.
You have to stand for something because you can really fall for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of saw that as, Nikki just being Nikki and letting you know where her truth lied.
Switch gears a little bit. Want to
Okay.
talk another artist
Mm-hmm.
who pulled in so many different kind of expressive forms. It's so hard to even think about how to speak about her legacy without trying to box it in. But I'm thinking about Ntozake Shange.
Ah.
First up,
Mm-hmm.
Bobby, what do you think of her changing her name as a political statement? So originally, right, she was named Paulette Williams, but then she changed her name to the, excuse me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, it's spelled Xosa, tribal name
Mm-hmm.
Xhosa.
Mm-hmm.
Change that to a name that means she who comes with her own things and she who walks with lions. What do you think about just her changing her name first off as a political statement?
I got nothing but support for that because I've always been very fluid about names because these are almost like bodies. They're temporary handles, dynamics to what you are truly called. I mean, I have a little kitten at home, and I it has a formal name. I tend to call it cat or kitten or whatever it is, little creature. And but my whole thing is, what did your mama call you? What do your people call you? I mean, I may have a name for you, but what are you? And I am always supportive of people who, as they go on their life journey, decide to say, listen, I, you know, this is, there's that definition, those handles that were dropped on me when I arrived, and those are necessary. We all need identifiers. But now that I know a bit more about who I am in this place, let me help you understand how to consider who I am. And that name is the first step. Ain't nothing but respect for anybody's name. Now,
Yeah.
just to let you know, I I will never say that I was a friend of Zaki, but I knew her since she lived here in Philly for a very, very long time. And so I had the experience of listening to her um explain a lot of things.
Mm.
Her creative vein was fascinating to me, and really one that was challenging even to other artists. You
Mm.
know, but there is no question that Ntozake was a game changer. With that, when did it come out? It was in the mid '70s because that was a good while ago.
Yeah, for color girl.
For colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. Right there, that's a statement. Right there. It says so much. And to mix poetry and dance and to go deep into the heart and soul of black women, I mean, that is a powerful, powerful statement, and one that is it just resonates.
Absolutely.
No
Absolutely.
doubt.
Just thinking about for color girls. Well, we got a little bit of a stickler question. I can only imagine the backlash that she may have received when it was first released. When I first encountered it in undergrad, I was pissed because I was like, "Why haven't I heard about Ntozake like way earlier? Like, what's going on?" But I also remember just let's just say some hypermasculine folks being a bit upset around some of the
Yeah,
content in girls.
yeah. I mean, she was talking about trauma, about being betrayed by, by a partner,
Mm,
by men folk. She talked about sexual assault. She talked about abandonment.
mm,
Those are things that hurt. Just to even hear those words hurt. And then she put music and dance to that. I know there were a lot of guys who were like, this is anti-male. And it's
mhm,
like, no, I don't think it's so much anti-male as it is anti-continued pain.
mm.
I mean, you know, she she broke down the cycles of harm that women folk especially, those patterns that they can find themselves into. And for colored girls was an eye opener because it helped especially those women and families that were impacted by these cycles. It helped them to see themselves and to possibly even see a way out. And if nothing else, it let them know that they were not alone. Because these are still quiet, sadly, they are burdens that so many people carry on their own and never share until they finally, maybe, possibly get it together and can separate themselves from those situations. I mean, you know, Ntozake dealt with pain and did it in a way that made it hard to look away from.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I'm, again, was able to utilize the time period that she was in. If you want to talk about the women's rights movement, if you want to talk about the ERA, the 27 words of the Equal Rights Amendment, which to this day has yet to be ratified,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother discussion. But if you want to talk about this era of the 70s, because that play came out in 1976, I believe. We're still just a couple of years past the ratification of Roe v. Wade, where abortion is legalized for women in America, a right that doesn't exist at this point now. So you look at the time period that she was in, and she took a lot of things that was happening, some conversations that had been very difficult that was now a part of the evening news cycle, and she was able to create and I haven't even heard anybody use the term since, a choreo poem. you
Yeah.
know yeah,
Yeah.
Ntozake got lock on all of that. And it still hits
It still
when
does.
you think about you know the lady in red, the lady in blue, the ladies, the different women
Yeah.
and their stories.
Yeah.
It's you know, it and it like you just said, what we're doing here is making sure that that name is said. There's an old saying that comes, I would say, outside of Black culture where I first heard it, but I still believe it to be true. That a may even come from a Disney movie now that I recalled it, but that a person a person truly dies when their names are not being said any longer. So
Yeah.
it is up for us to continue to uplift and herald and say their name
Hmm.
and pass the baton,
Yes.
because this opens up that door of curiosity, because folk want to know what you know and why it makes you feel the way you feel.
Holiday magic is in the air, and DSW's got all the shoes to make your season extra merry. Believe, you've got parties to attend and lists to check twice, so DSW is taking care of the details, like gifts to make their eyes all aglow, styles that bring joy to your world, brands everyone wants, like UGG, Nike, Birkenstock, and more, and deals to make your budget bright. Find the perfect shoes for you and yours at a DSW store near you or dsw.com.
Gift the remarkable with Marc Jacobs fragrances this holiday season. From the iconic Daisy and Perfect to the all-new Daisy Wild, Marc Jacobs perfume gift sets include everything she needs to feel special. From her favorite fragrance, plus the matching travel spray, holiday gifts don't get much more perfect than this. So if you're looking for a gift inspiration these holidays, gift the remarkable with Marc Jacobs.
Okay. Want to switch gears a bit? Just going to discuss two more folks and really think about them in relationship to this concept of representation. So right now I'm thinking about India RE,
Oh,
who's given us so much, but so much of her music is kind of address identity, beauty, and self-acceptance. Uh, what would you have to say about India RE and her contributions to the culture? And specifically, I'm thinking about her "I Am Not My Hair" track.
well, there's the acceptance, but I always look at it as cultural pride. I mean, she has always um, advocated for natural beauty and self worth,
Hmm.
and so and honestly, I am almost amazed that she's been as resilient as she's been in such an industry. I mean, you kind of look at her roots and where she came from, almost like Jill Scott. She was, just doing the on her guitar, doing the little shows, in Atlanta. She was just like a natural girl doing her thing naturally, and then was picked up and had a message that resonated and pushed buttons, not for the majority society, but even for black folk, because there are a lot of black folk that do not like you to question, you know, why they do what they do to their hair.
Mm.
Um, and she was willing, she's willing to do that. But she also, one thing I always liked about India too are her spiritual roots as well. I mean, she's very grounded to uh, to the energy of the universe.
Absolutely.
But then, she still had the nerve, gumption, let's call it that. She had the gumption to stand up against Spotify.
Yeah.
And say, nope, take my music off your platform. We're not doing that. It was a lot of people that said they were going to do it. She actually did it. Now I think if I jump on Spotify right now, I can probably find some India Irie. And I can't even be mad at that because she still took a stance and stood on business about business and gave some people a reason to rethink where they were at with things. I mean, I've always dug her because I just find her to be solid, and she has a way of addressing some of that historical, creative dynamic that we have always had without, I can't say she politicizes it because sadly our hair is political.
Yeah.
But she brings it back around to the connective tissue that makes us who we are as Black people in this community, this society of America.
Yes, indeed. One last question on NDRE. Just thinking about how she may appear to maybe some younger generations who weren't around when she first landed on the scene. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was, over the past like maybe 2 years, maybe last year, I believe this was, there was a bit of backlash that NDRE received after, critiquing Meg Thee Stallion and Janelle Monáe's performance for being somewhat suggestive or maybe even sexually explicit. What do you think about this backlash? And what do you think about her claims that these performances were a bit too suggestive? Do you feel like this may contradict notions of like bodily autonomy, or just any thoughts there at all?
I understand, and she makes some real good points. If one were to just casually observe the career timeline of Janelle Monáe and just, I don't know, do a side-by-side promotional image of her now as compared to a decade ago. You go, and the thing is that I always felt that Janelle Monáe was just a dynamic artist. Just, I mean, wildly, musically in some other space. Like, honestly, like knocking at the door, being up there with Prince. She's one of them kind of peeps. But I've questioned why some of the radical decisions have been made in terms of her current marketing. And I understand why India Irie would point it out, because again, those things have a cascading effect. If she can, why can't you? Because sadly, the element of fame for women is exposing your body. It's just a part of the game. And if that was not on the table in the beginning, it's real interesting to see it when I say not on the table, but in the timeline of the said artists that we're discussing, if that was not the part of their foundation, if their foundation was built on talent and a very precise look, because there was, the wardrobing was always interesting. And so we've all of that has kind of been discarded for a whole other very sexualized presentation. And it can be troubling because, again, those expectations as a woman, they cascade down to you.
Absolutely.
Also, you have to, it's not even just about caring about yourself, but if you're a person that cares about the culture, and NDIRE has always emphasized, how you're going to, counter societal pressures as a Black woman, and knowing that one of the big societal dynamics and definition of a Black woman is sexualized. You got to speak out, because this isn't about authenticity. There's some other things that are going on that need to be explored. In our community, our children, our people are impacted by these decisions. These are not absent of, for every action there's a reaction. And so we have to sometimes call those things out.
Absolutely.
I understand the criticism, but I also understand the reason. I understand the criticism against India Ivory, but I also understand explicitly why she felt the need to comment. And not just comment on that, but also on the venue and the not the venue, but the performance element in which that happened, because the Essence Music Festival has definitely had an evolution.
Yes, it has. It absolutely has. Oh my goodness. Okay, just want to discuss one last artist.
Sure.
And it's actually somewhat related to what we were just discussing. Visualizing the hypersexual. It does make me wonder if that could ever function as a form of activism, as a form of protest. And now I'm thinking about Carrie Mae Weems, specifically how she photographed her own body, as a subject in much of her work. So I'm thinking about the Kitchen Table series specifically.
Yes. The complexity of the Black experience is shared in our music. It's shared in our literature. And, when you think of images, especially photography, and how it's difficult to argue with the raw reality that you're witnessing. And what I like about her, because I've had a chance to see her Kitchen Table series in a couple of wonderful art venues, is it makes the, first of all, it's the kitchen table. That's the unifying place in every home. Everything happens at the kitchen table, but she peels back the reality a bit, and you could almost kind of see that beating heart to what was beneath the stern, the how we're getting through it. I always felt her work was multidimensional, beyond art, and definitely understanding how to use photography as a means to get below the surface. It's, and now with everyone having, a camera in their pocket at all times, more people can explore their visual dynamic, and we see the evidence of that all the time because people aren't just taking pictures. Folk are going in. You got productions, you got all kinds of stuff that's happening that people are doing. But those are again, exploring the lives that they're leading or the lives that they believe they should be leading.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I felt that that's what Carrie Mae was doing because she was really able to explore a whole nother vein of Black woman creativity with a camera.
Absolutely. My goodness. Okay. All right. I only got 2 more questions for you, Bobbi. I promise.
Only 2?
Only
Did I tell you I was a photographer too? But that's another story.
Oh.
I
Okay.
get into the zone. I'm like in it to win it. I have a whole thing, but that's a detour. We'll talk about that another time.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
All right. To close the phone out here, I'm thinking about the current historical and political moment that we're in, in light of the election and whatnot. And, myself, as well as a lot of the folks I'm around these days, we're deeply fearful of some of the attacks on public education that's about to happen, been happening. It's about to be ramped up a bit. With that said, Bobbi, do you feel like the arts can be an avenue to educate future generations about Black history?
Always. My personal story is that I was raised by a Black man, and a Black man who came from the South, came from the Deep South as part of the Great Migration, and decided on Philadelphia. Had never been to Philadelphia a day in his life, but said that's where Black folk thrive. So he chose Philadelphia, and he came here because did not want to deal with the madness that was going on there. One of the things he brought with him, though, was this sincere belief that he could do what others could do or say they could do just as good, if not better than. So when I went to school, they would give me basic reading. He would give me more.
Wow.
When they would talk about Black History Week, which became Black History Month, he would say, Black history is every day of the year. And he was saying that when I was a child.
Wow.
And so he insisted that you cannot depend on one source for information, especially if you care about what the future is going to be, and I care about my culture and how that's resonating with my future. And so I had all of those elements as a part of just my everyday. There were Black History Moment calendars, Black comic books. He figured out where to find Black dolls in an era that Black dolls didn't necessarily exist.
Wow.
So I say that to say that we always have to find ways to supplement and ensure that ours get what it is that is needed. We're always going to take care of, if we can go to church and get the word and continue to ensure that church culture is passed on, because there are babies that are in those pulpits, and those babies grow up, and then they take their babies, And then you have the folk as they get to the middle portion of their lives, they're going to show up in church because they need to make sure they somebody says a nice word when they leave. So, you've got that. But then we also have to do that with all the other elements. You have to make sure you take your children to art museums. You don't have to know anything. All you have to do is be there. You'll learn. Read the signs. Read the bubbles. Talk to the security guards. They're usually Black, and they're there all the time. And no one ever picks them and say, "Hey, what do you know about this?" And a lot of times they know a whole lot. Talk to look outside of the norm. Maintain your curiosity, but more than anything, be vigilant about maintaining your culture and passing all elements of your culture. Every creative element of your culture, and be very careful about what you disparage, because that may be planting the seed for what is next. It's a mindset, but it's one that I believe we can all easily embrace. And more than anything, if it's not a part of your personal makeup, I bet you there's somebody in your community, it's a part of theirs. So make sure that, if you don't know who does, and be a part of that. I'm very disparaged this time of year because every year I hear less and less about Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
And I say that because it's kind of interesting, because now I'm starting to see, let's just say the mainstream is catching up with Kwanzaa. So I've seen Kwanzaa cards and all kinds, but the celebration of that has, I believe, lessened. It's getting further and further away from its original messaging and suggestion of what it was supposed to be. And while, I wonder if Kwanzaa, as we've known it to be, if it can even make it to 100 years. It's crawled past 50. It's like, wonder if it can really get to 60. And I say that because at the 75, 80-year mark, everyone who was involved with making Kwanzaa, those foundational folk, they're all going to be gone.
Yeah.
And if the next wave is not taking it, then Kwanzaa becomes this line, an African American holiday created in the late 20th century, finally faded to black, all puns intended, by 2038. I mean,
that's a possibility.
That's a possibility. But there are folk that are doing it. I try and go to intimate Kwanzaa celebrations every year because I know there are families that are doing their due diligence. I wish it were more, but I know what I'm dealing with. I just know I need to do my part. And that's why I'm here with you, and I'm just honored to help be a part of that messaging so that we can do this together and do our own Hail Mary to the future.
We've been asking all of our guests to just lift up one song to add to our joint playlist for Black liberation. With that said, and thinking about this Hail Mary to the future, what's one song, Bobbi, that has to be on your soundtrack for the revolution?
Well, now, I've got one for you, and it's one that comes to the top of my playlist every now and then. I don't think you'll be surprised if I mention Jilly from Philly.
All right.
And the one thing about Jill Scott, I know we talked about her relationship with Sonia Sanchez. And, you know, because she was in Sonia's classes at Temple University. Everybody and their mama went to Sonia's class. If you could do, because Sonia kept an open door. You could come sit in. You didn't have to be a student. You didn't have to pay, in other words. So she was cool like that. But the other thing is that Jill was also seeped in the sound of Philadelphia, that musical force that was created by Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. And so much of their music, yeah, they do love songs and all of that, but so much of their music was about consciousness, Black consciousness, how to be a good person, you know, how to be a good neighbor. And so with that, the tune that comes to mind is I Keep.
I Keep, okay.
I Keep. And it's really a song of resilience, staying strong in the struggle, especially us as Black people staying strong in the struggle. It's also one of those tunes that has kind of a surprise. So I know I can only give you one song, but it's a 2-for-1.
Oh.
So, you know, that's my contribution to the playlist. And I can't wait to hear all the other songs that are on the playlist.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We can't wait to check it out, Bobbi. Thank you so much for helping us unpack this rich conversation, helping us think through Black women artists' contributions to political movements, helping us think about the spiritual sustenance that we get from all these rich Black women's artists and all their works. And thank you so much for just taking time to share your voice, your experience with us. We got to have you back on. Thank you, Bobbi.
I can't wait. This has been a joy and a treat. And more than anything, I am just beyond honored to be a part of sharing. You know, this makes me feel good, but more than anything, I feel as though I'm fulfilling the dreams of my forefathers, and especially my dear father, Benny Booker, who would just be dancing on the roof to know that I was a part of sharing this messaging with you. Thank you very much.
That was the remarkable Bobbi Booker, radio personality, journalist, and audio architect. You can learn more about her work and listen to her weekly show, Spirit Soul Music, on WRTI, which presents a curated playlist of spiritually oriented, socially conscious, and invigorating music. And remember, art is one of the most powerful forms of truth-telling. Our very presence is an act of resistance, and our voices can transform our fight for justice in supernatural ways. What do y'all think? Let us know in the comments of Push Black's Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube pages. Find us and tag us at We Are Push Black. And if you found this conversation valuable, don't forget to share this episode on your social media too. Until next week, be free. You're living in history. At Push Black, we agree with Marcus Garvey when he said, a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. We believe telling empowering stories on Black life and history can build a more liberated Black future. Being here with us lets us know you probably feel that's important too. You matter. Your choice to be here matters. And lets us know that you value this work. And you make Push Black happen with your contributions at blackhistoryyear.com. Most people do $5 or $10 a month, but everything makes a difference. Thank you for supporting the work. Black History Year is a production of Push Black, the nation's largest nonprofit Black media company. Our team includes Brooke Brown, Amber Davis, Mina Davis, Kevin McFall, Gabby Roberts, and Leslie Taylor Grover. Producing the show, we have Cydney Smith and Len Webb, who also edits the show. Black History Year's executive producers are Lilly Workneh and Julian Walker. And I'm your host, Darren Wallace.